So there's a church here in ReadEhThon. It's very peaceful. It's a Monday evening and nobody's here. And I walked up this hill behind, in the distance at the horizon. And I'm going to take a little walk. Well, I want to do my 5 kilometers, which is around 3.5 miles maybe each day. And yesterday I couldn't do it because, I was in a hospital. Actually went to the Södersjukhus hospital yesterday, to the emergency room. I had pain in my left chest and my back and in the thorax region, and I called in late at night and they thought it would be better to get in there to get me checked. And luckily it's nothing with my heart, so they discovered that I didn't have any heart attack or something. But the doctor was sure that it has something to do with muscles and nerves, and maybe, no, not with discs, but with muscles and nerves, she thought. And I want to get to I want to check this out, of course, and I'm going to do that in the next days. But this actually prevented me from reading much more Canadian books yesterday. And the ReadEhThon, the last day of the ReadEhThon, was a failure for me. But luckily I'm here and I'm alive and I can talk to you. I read 2 books during the ReadEhThon. The first one was actually a book that I didn't know I owned. It's a book by an LGBTQ author, it's an immigrant who came to Canada when she was like 8 or 9 years old. That's Samra Habib's book, We Have Always Been Here. And I'm going to talk about it on my next stop to you. Well, hello again. I didn't make another video outside. I was walking about 5 kilometers until I slowly realized that it's getting too dark to shoot outside videos. So now I'm sitting here at home at 11 o'clock and I hope that the lighting for this video is kind of acceptable for the rest of this video. Well, I was at the hospital yesterday on Sunday, almost the whole day. I went there 5 a.m. in the morning and left there 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And when I arrived in the emergency room, there were just a few people and it was sort of cozy as an emergency room can be. There was no one who was really very sick, apparently, at least no one that I could see. So, but then a woman arrived and that was pretty creepy, I think, because I didn't know that the Södersjukhus in Stockholm takes in COVID-19 patients through the same entrance as they take in all other patients. And this woman was apparently very sick, and she was sitting like 5-6 meters away from others, from me and from other patients who were waiting in distance to each other, like 2 meters or so. And then she came and I was thinking, oh my God, I hope that this is okay. And I hope that she gets okay, of course. And they took her away and wearing lots of PPE, and it was really a creepy, strange moment. And then I got some blood tests and I got some electrocardiogram, it's called, I think, and they said, okay, your heart is okay. Everything seems to be fine, although I still have a little pain in my chest and in my shoulder. But the doctor is quite convinced that it's a muscular problem. The doctor is quite convinced that it's a muscular problem. So I haven't read that much. The ReadEhThon was almost finished for me. Yesterday was the last day of the ReadEhThon. I would have loved to start another book, but I actually finished now 2 books during the ReadEhThon. The first one was that I found on my Kindle was We Have Always Been Here by Samra Habib. And this was a magical read. I started it I think on Tuesday and I finished it on Thursday. It was a very quick read because it immersed. I was totally immersed into the memoir of Samra Habib, who tells us the story of her upbringing in Pakistan under very strict religious rules and rules of the family that are based on religious rules, and how they went to Canada because they were prosecuted by the majority of Muslims in Pakistan. So the family went to Canada as refugees, and Samra's growing up in Canada, where she was forced to marry her cousin, and her slow coming out that she's queer, and her struggle with the family to not lose the family, but also to be able to make her own way into the world. And today she's a very well-known photographer who takes photographs, portrait photographs of queer people, in the majority of queer Muslims all over the world. That was an amazing read, Samra Habib, We Have Always Been Here. Very engaging, very beautiful, very haunting. There's a lot of post-traumatic stress syndrome from the childhood for Samra that she is still overcoming, I guess. But this was a powerful not a novel. This is a powerful memoir that shows us that it is possible to leave a very defining, prescribing background behind, and that you can go your own way. Habib, We Have Always Been Here. The second Canadian book I read last week, I bought this in Seattle at the Elliott Bay Book Company 2 years ago when I visited Seattle. It was a Canadian novel because I did not buy books in Canada, unfortunately, so I bought a Canadian book in the United States. And this was Sam Wiebe's debut. I think it's his first novel, at least, with the private eye, the private detective Dave Wakeland, and this is called Invisible Dead. Invisible Dead. That's the cover, and that's the book that I have explained that before in the ReadEhThon video. That looks pretty watery, but now it's dried. There was a lot of water covering this book, and this is a detective novel about a girl who has vanished in Vancouver, Canada, 12, 13 years ago, and Dave Wakeland gets a client. He has a client, a woman who is dying of cancer, and she asks Dave to look for this woman, for this young, who would be 34 years old now. She was her adopted daughter, and she wants to know what happened to Chelsea all those years ago before she dies. And so David gets into that story, Dave Wakeland, and he's really a private eye that reminds me a lot of the classical American private eyes, but not in the 1940s or 50s, but in our time in the 2000s and the 2010s, probably, mostly. And this is an amazing portrait of the city of Vancouver. I learned so much about Vancouver by reading this. And I always like when authors do reference to music or to places that are real in those towns. So I definitely want to visit the Tomahawk Grill in Vancouver when I go there for the next time. I want to eat a Yukon breakfast. That sounds very interesting. I listen to a lot of music that Dave Wakeland, the protagonist, is listening to. Beautiful music, blues music by Kelly Lee Evans singing songs of Nina Simone, Ingrid Jansen, I think a Canadian jazz musician, Esperanza Spalding, Soundgarden, Neil Young, Albuquerque, Mark Lonigan, and lots of other great musicians in this novel. I like that when I very often turn the music on, when I have a passage like Dave Wakeland is listening to Esperanza Spalding to this and this record, I put on the record on Spotify and I'm listening to this record then to get totally immersed into the story and to listen to the same kind of music that the protagonist is hearing at the time. I like novels with soundtracks, and this has a very beautiful soundtrack. It is a great portrait of Vancouver. I really, really enjoyed Invisible Dead by Sam Wiebe. What plans do I have for reading next? The ReadEhThon is apparently over. I haven't read The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel because I didn't really like it. I wouldn't even call it a DNF. I started reading the first 10-15 pages and it wasn't a Rainierbooks, so I probably DNF'd it and brought it back to the library so that someone else can read it and can love it, can enjoy it. I want to read The Vanishing Half by Bennett, which is, I think, one of my next reads this week. I want to read I still want to read Stanley Park by Timothy Taylor, which was on my ReadEhThon list, but I will give it another try to continue with that book now in August. And because this is Women in Translation month, and I didn't want to read only Women in Translation during the month of August, but I want to read one or two of those titles. I have three different books that I might be reading during August for Women in Translation. One of them is a Japanese novelist by the name of Kanae Minato, and this is the German translation, Schuldig, Guilty, by Kanae Minato. Was published in Germany by Bertelsmann in 2019. It was translated from the Japanese by Sabine Mangold. This is a novel that was published in Tokyo in 2017. 5 students who live in Tokyo want to spend a couple of days in a cottage in a very distant village. One of them, Hirosawa, dies at night in a car accident in a very curvy mountainous road. 3 years later, this horrible event is sort of getting at the former study friends. They get anonymous letters and they are being accused to have killed her friend. Who writes these letters and what actually happened in this very horrible night 3 years ago? Schuldig, Guilty by Kanae Minato. That is Woman in Translation number 1. Woman in Translation number 2 are short stories. The collection of short stories that I'm going to read is Your Ad Could Go Here by Oksana Zabushko from Ukraine. That is a short story collection. Oksana Zabushko has been very successful internationally, even with her first novel, Fieldwork in Ukrainian Sex, that was published a couple of years ago. And I'm looking forward to read again, after a pause of lots of years actually, reading literature from the Ukraine or from Russia. So this will be interesting for me. The next reading during Women in Translation, Oksana Zabushko and Kanae Minato, are 2 titles that I will be able to read hopefully during the month of August. I will tell you in the wrap-up of this month if I really did it, if I really managed to do it, because I'm very spontaneous in what I read next. I haven't plans that go like, because I know I cannot stick to my plans. What else? I will work tomorrow from my home office and will probably read a little bit less. We'll see how I do. We'll probably work a lot from home, even during the next weeks, and we'll see what the schools in Sweden do. I'm working a lot with schools here, so and trying to establish. We have to do a lot of online events still in the future. Tell me what you are up to right now, read-wise and otherwise, in the comments below. If you are a new visitor, thanks for dropping by. If you are a subscriber to the channel, thank you very much for watching again. And I wish you have a pleasant next week. Thank you very much. Stay safe and bye-bye.